everyone. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you so much for attending our second event we're hosting today to celebrate International Women's Day with the Center for Global Partnership and Learning in association with Pepperdine University Graduate School of Education and Psychology. Let me introduce myself. My name is Reverend Charlotta Green. I am one of the graduate students here at the center and a PhD student with GCEP. I will be hosting our panel this evening, and we'll introduce our two moderators in just a few minutes. If this is your first time hearing about our center, please allow me to provide some information. The Center for Global Partnerships and Learning provides GCEP students with a myriad of services ranging from publication support, certificate programs, access to GSEP's academic journal, and a few other services. Our center also hosts events, info sessions, and workshops on various topics, such as the one we're having tonight. Let me introduce to you your moderators for the night, Dr. Aasiyah Ghazi and Dr. Gabriella Miramontes. Dr. Aasiyah Ghazi is an associate faculty member at the University of Arizona Global Campus, teaching leadership courses in the Bachelor of Arts in Business Leadership program with the Forbes School of Business and Technology. In addition to teaching, Dr. Ghazi works with the Associate Dean's Office with Dr. Miramontes as a graduate assistant for excellence and innovation program, which is EIP, as well as for the Center for Global Partnerships and Learning. Dr. Ghazi is also a professional coach and trainer facilitating various leadership training, workshops, courses, and seminars with individuals and corporations. She is the host of her own podcast called The Creative Woman Leader, which can be found on all podcast listening platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Dr. Ghazi graduated from Pepperdine University in July of 2021, obtaining her doctoral degree in organizational leadership, and is currently back at Pepperdine University, earning her second doctorate, a PhD in global leadership and change. Dr. Ghazi holds a master's degree in human resource management from DeVry University and a bachelor's of science in business administration from California State University, Northridge. Her area of research is in women in leadership and imposter syndrome. Her dissertation focused on women leaders in the engineering field, using the best strategies and practices to overcome the feelings of inadequacy and imposterism. In addition, she has also co-authored a few publications and published her first leadership journal on Amazon called the Creative Leader Journal. Dr. Gabriella Miramontes is a passionate human capacity developer, leadership advocate, and project management professional, bringing nonprofit experience, strategy, leadership development, organizational effectiveness, portfolio management to ECE K-12, and higher education. She has over 20 years of experience working in nonprofit education consulting arena and has demonstrated success in driving high stakes project execution, building collaborative partnerships and leadership advisement, assessment management, and training development. She has been affiliated with Pepperdine for over 20 years, is an alum of both GBS in 01 and GSEP 02 and 08, and has been an adjunct professor since 2015. She transitioned to full-time faculty in 2020. Her areas of interest are in training and development, assessment, higher education, mentoring, leadership, and issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the impact of women of color. She currently teaches leadership, change management, research, DEI, and comprehensive exams, is a founding member and director of the Excellence and Innovation Program, as well as the director of the Center for Global Leadership and Partnerships and Learning. Here are our two hosts, and I will turn it over to them. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you all so much for being here. We are so excited that you're here today to listen into our Women's Day panel. And so I would like to introduce our panel to all of you, and then we're going to go ahead and get started, okay? So going from the order that I see in my screen, right alongside Dr. Miramontes, who is my co-moderator for this evening, we have Dr. Simon Taylor, we have Dr. Samahania, we have Suellen Schneider, we have Dr. Weina Chen, we have Dr. Alice Jokadola, we have Dr. Marlene Garcia, we have Dr. Jeanette Pugh. And with that said, we are ready to go. And I would like to go ahead and hand it off over to Dr. Miramontes to go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Dr. Aasiyah. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate your participation. I know that you all have your own experiences and background, and we have a multitude of diversity in the room or on the call. So thank you up front for that. As we begin our conversation around International Women's Day, curious to know, as we reflect on International Women's Day, has there ever been an instance, has there ever been a point in your professional career where you felt that being a woman either helped or hindered you? So, Dr. Samin, would you care to answer that question?
Yes. In 2016, while I was obtaining my master at Pepperdine University, I was asked to join an extraordinary special council of women, the Los Angeles Department of Veterans Affairs Medical Center Women Veterans Patient Advisory Council. Women Veteran Patient Advisory Council was the first council of its kind in the history of the United States, working on behalf of all undeserved U.S. military veterans, women service-connected, disabled, LGBTQ, and men throughout the California region. Our small but mighty team of diverse experts worked directly with the VHA, VBA, Senate, California State, non-profit local authorities, and especially with the U.S. military veterans, veterans' families, medical center, physicians, and staff. Our team conducted field research work with clinical researchers through UCLA, USC, and VA. We had 100% suicide intervention rate on behalf of US military veterans. We worked toward the appropriate healthcare outcomes, supported beneficial housing outcomes, supported patients and veterans' rights, intervened with the direct support for veterans benefit with the VBA, acted as a liaison with the direct access to higher education, created financial literacy and banking opportunities, provided food, clothing, and for reaching empowerment for US military veterans. It was a life-changing experience working on behalf of supporting multiple thousands of veterans with zero budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Marlene, would you care to jump in regarding that particular question? And this actually works around your research as well, correct?
Yes, no, thank you. And just want to say what a pleasure it is to be in this panel with all of you and an honor. I'm a fan of all of you. I follow some of you in your research as well. And it's nice to be in this group of very accomplished women. So thank you for having me. I would say, I always bring a balanced approach to the table. And I guess my answer will be that way as well. For people that know me, I'm more of the glass half full perspective. So as a woman, I feel like I've brought that perspective to the table along my career in my organizations and my groups, and kind of having that positive outlook of, whether it's a generational, ethnic perspective, language perspective, cultural perspective. I think that's been the strength that I've seen as far as being able to what I can bring to the table in that perspective. However, I'm not naive to the point that that's also been an issue where there are elements, particularly in my career. I spent the last 20 years in the telecommunications space and the hospitality business. And the fact that there are still networks that exist out there that are very gender oriented. And when I say that and spell it out, it's very male oriented. And so the concept of the boys club and cracking the code and breaking those barriers. So that's been the element of, getting, how do you overcome those challenges and and kind of the solutions around that. And then more importantly, to your point, Dr. Miramontes, around my research, I think that's what inspired me to then look at solutions, right? You can have the most positive outlook, do all the right things, follow the recipe for success, have the right mentors. And what happens when you're blocked or you feel you're not getting access to information, or that there is a reigning network of a group of individuals, in this case, male-oriented industries, that do make the decisions. Some of you may be fans of the musical Hamilton. I love that line in Hamilton that talks about being in the room when it happens. And so that was literally the platform of defining my career and saying, well, how do you get to be that person in the room where it happens and the decision makers are there? And so, you know, going back to the question around how has that helped you or hindered you? It's helped me from the standpoint of being optimistic and knowing that I can be a problem solver and bring unique solutions to the table. But on the flip side, being very realistic and also having those conversations around mentorship, allyship, we have to have that balanced approach. Our male peers and friends have to be in the room with us and support us and bring us along the way. So that was one of the solutions. Instead of fighting it, it's working along with the groups that probably take up majority power decision making. So that summarizes my answer, Dr. Miramontes.
Wonderful, thank you. Sue Ellen, would you like to chime in here?
Yeah, that's great. And I like what Dr. Marilyn says, because I agree with this approach. We have to play with, to play the game, right? With all the diversity we find in our career. And I experienced both sides of it. I think that the fact that I am a woman helped me with lead people more inclusively, because I could see that my male peers, they couldn't, for example, embrace diversity the way I could. We have some characteristics, and a lot of research shows us that we can lead, for example, from the center. We have a lot of characteristics that help us as women to lead more inclusively. And this is what I think helped me even to overcome the challenges, because we more often than we would like, we face those challenges. For example, I faced a long time ago a boss who said, oh, you were going to get married, and this is kind of an issue here. So we face this kind of situation, and how do we overcome the situation? As Dr. Marilyn well said, we cannot fight against one specific person, but we can learn how to understand and use our allyship to overcome those situations. And that is what exactly I did. And part of my allies were male and female. So I could overcome the situation, with the help of other male that they didn't agree with the guy that, was opposed to my promotion because I was getting married. So, this is just part of my experience that I want to share with you to show the importance of, understanding that this exists, but it is not a barrier that cannot be overcome. You can always look for allyship. You can always look how to deal with this situation and, find ways. We are kind of creative, right? We learn to be creative in finding solutions.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dr. Jokadola.
Yeah, so I'm on the good side. It's helped and it's hindered. When it comes to how it's hindered, it's a matter of, I used to work in PR and marketing before I decided to switch to education. And there's been plenty of meetings and conversations that as a woman, I should have been involved in for a female's perspective. And I wasn't, because the males were like, oh, you're a woman, you don't understand, actually saying this to me at work. But on the other end, they're like, well, there's other conversations where like, we need a female's perspective, which is where I come in and I'm of value to them. But where I found it very frustrating is in those conversations where a female's perspective was probably the most valuable perspective that could have been for that particular project, you never heard anyone say, oh, you're a man, your perspective is not needed on this. It was always very unbalanced and very unfair. And that can be very, very frustrating for women when it comes to our careers. How we feel like we're needed in this space, but we're not needed in that space. But our male counterparts, it's almost as if they need it in every space. So that can be very, very frustrating. And as everyone has said before, it's a matter of, you know, having our allies and talking about this, creating a space where this is talked about, and, you know, creating a space where women feel like they're welcomed. We have a lot to offer that I think sometimes we're just kind of shut out for just because we're women.
Thank you. Dr. Hania? I try to pronounce it the way Dr. Aasiyah pronounces it, and it just doesn't come out. So Dr. Sama,
It's
I'll stick
right.
with
That's
that.
right. Yeah, it's right. Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for inviting me, and it's really a great pleasure to be here and to talk about my experience and my perspective. So I would say being Arab women with 3 children and also Muslim who's wearing hijab, and I have like experienced different challenges along the way. And at some point, yeah, these challenges like impacted me to some extent, but then I tried to go over these challenges and think beyond these challenges and find a different way for me to show our existence, to raise our voices through different approaches, different ways. For example, like, you know, there is always this stereotype about Arab women in media, in TV, in movies, and especially like, you know, Muslim women wearing hijab and so on. Like they're not capable of doing things, having this negative stereotypes. Sometimes it's saddening me because this is not the reality. Like, you know, the statistic in, like, you know, if you go back to the statistic in my country, and currently there are more women who are educated than men, having like higher degree education. So I tried when I joined, when I first immigrated here and I joined the university for my master's degree, I met with other also international students, women, and you know, and we have like talked together, and we tried to find, we have like a common feeling among us, like being the other. So I tried to overcome this, and we tried to think about a different way. How can we bridge this gap, and how can we try to show, like, you know, a different representation, the representation of who we are. So we started something called, you know, a series about like diversity around the world. And then we started to have like this series on regular basis every 2 weeks, where like we started to talk about like who we are, try to bring different people to empower them and give them a voice, and to show others who we are, like, you know, the real statistics from those people who have been living the experience, and showing you know, that we can you know, we can do something, and we are moving beyond this stereotype that, like, you know, that we have seen and we have experienced. Yeah, I have experienced several situations, many situations, like, you know, as being different, but I tried to go over it and think beyond, moving these negative, like, you know, images that the people seeing into something that is more positive, more powerful, to raise awareness and to give women and like, you know, a voice to talk about their experiences, and to highlight you know, to highlight what they can do, and how we are really different, you know, how we have like a different image than what it's being represented in digital media. Yeah, so it's been like sometimes challenging, but, you know, if you think about it in a different way, it can be it can give you, like, you know, you can make it more a positive experience, I would say.
Right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Dr. Jeanette?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Miramontes, and thank you to all of you guys for allowing me to even be part of this great panel. I'm happy to share briefly my experiences of where I thought being a female either helped or hindered me. Being a female as well as a person of color, I believe, was something that very early on in my career, I realized I needed to leverage as a unique differentiator in the various circles and environments that I was placed in, that I was blessed to be placed in. And I was determined very on in my first career right out of college, where I was actually an engineer. Many people are surprised to hear that I was, working with a hard hat and steel-toed boots and out in the construction sites of a gigantic pharmaceutical company that was global. And I certainly faced various challenges, but I learned very early on to leverage me standing out and me being different as a strength, and something that allowed me to go to various sponsors. I know various people have commented on having allies. Well, I found the highest ranking female vice president at this organization, and I said to her, we got to change something, because I don't want to be the first, the only amongst the few. We have to create a talent pipeline within this organization that is more inclusive. And she completely agreed, but placed the challenge back on me. I was 20 something years old, fresh out of college. And that was, an eye-opening experience to have someone flip the script, so to speak, and say, well, Jeanette, I agree, but you do it. You find the solution. And from that, long story short, I created the Merck Women's Network, which to this day, 30 years later, several decades later, is still a sustainable network that is in existence with the same goal of ensuring that there's a diverse, inclusive pipeline of talent that is contributing to the organization and recognized for the value that it brings to the organization. So in terms of where being a female and a person of color helped me in my career, it started early on with that shift of my frame of thinking, for me to recognize it's actually a gift from God. It's actually, and I can say that, thank goodness, in this arena, because Pepperdine is a Christian-based organization. I feel very grateful to be able to, to be that bold, but I felt very early on that it was a calling, that God placed me in various positions and gave me the platform to ensure that I was never going to be the first, the only, and amongst the few, that I was always creating a pipeline of others to increase diverse representation. And then in terms of it being a barrier, I would just say that throughout my career, and moving from engineering into human resources and various other areas that I've dabbled in, I honestly have come to find that the biggest barrier started right here with the most important organ in the body, my brain. Me having to talk back the inner critic or the self-doubt. At the end of the day, that was the key for me in reframing my thinking and never viewing me being different as a barrier. And that's why, Dr. Ghazi, your work on imposterism is so powerful, because certainly research shows that one of the biggest barriers for women in particular is that we doubt our capabilities. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you. And Dr. Wayna?
Hi, everyone. Yes, again, here I am very honored to be invited to be in this panel. So I always introduce myself this way. I finished my PhD at Pepperdine, and during those 4 years, I gave birth to 2 kids. So I will start from there. So that's kind of the way I feel it was a challenge or hinder my career, because during those time and their voices, right? They're telling you, take a break, take it slow. You can take a year off, or, do this and that. Don't take on too much responsibilities. And I think they probably wouldn't say that to a man who are going to become a father or a second time. So that's a hard part, because now I know that they are saying probably from a good heart, but at the same time, all those voices make me feel guilty about me being a mom, not taking care of my kids. Especially people say, oh, wow, your son is only 5 months and you're putting him to a childcare, right? So for me, I am trying to balance my time in work and family. My son is 8 months now. My daughter is 3.5. So, and it's very challenging, just both physically and mentally, because I feel at night after everyone goes sleep, I want to work, I want to produce. But at that time, my body is just drained, and I cannot just simply physic. The other positive part, and I see some of my students are here, it's I do feel it helps me, because at least in one of the program I teach at Pepperdine, I am the only female professor for the last 2 terms. And I have a lot of female students, international students included. And I didn't notice this until one student told me that. And I was like, wow, okay. So I guess I am an inspiration, or at least a motivation for the students. And they know that I am represented, like a representation for them. So that makes me feel very honored and feel like very motivated to do more, just to continue to do what I do and try to be a role model for them as well, hopefully. Yeah, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for answering that question. Some of the similarities that we all seem to carry, and I speak for Dr. Aasiyah and myself only because I work with her so closely, so I'm not trying to speak for her, but just in this regard, is this idea of positive thinking, right? And having that understanding of capacity and capability. Like, we might struggle, but we're going to do this. And we might get in our own heads, but we're going to do this. Like, there's not a question of to whether we're going to do it or not. It's, we know we're going to do it. It's just how we get there. And that's something that I hear from all of you. So moving on to our next question. And for our next question, you don't all have to answer. I'm going to ask that you actually volunteer yourselves, just because of the content. But we know that a few of you have international experience. How have your experiences internationally compared to those experiences here in the States? Dr. Wayna, would you, or Dr. Marlene?
No, please, Dr. Wayna I'll follow.
All right, I'll go first instead of going back and forth. Okay, so I did, the majority of my life, I would say I was growing outside of the US. I have been in US since 2012, so 10 years now. But when I was born and raised in China, and I'm also 3rd generation Korean, so I am like multicultural. One story I can tell: when I was little, I don't know how families are right now, but at least when I was a little, when we have celebrations like festivals, one thing very interesting is all the men will go to the main table to eat, and all the women, all the moms with their children will sit on the floor, and then to eat together. So that's just one culture perspective. I wouldn't say it's oppression or one way or another. Maybe the wives enjoy talking with each other, right? Anyway, but the other story is when I experienced myself. When I was born, my grandma was very upset that I was a girl. So, and she forced my mom to get pregnant again to have a second one. And she's saying if the second one is a girl, then she will go to a different hospital and see like secret like tips to how to get boys. And however, my mom's belly shapes like, you know, it's fairy tale, but people say, oh, it's a girl again, right? It's not, no foundation, medical foundation. So it shows like a girl. So my grandma didn't even bother to go to the hospital when my mom gave the birth to the second one. And then my dad called her after the birth and said, oh, it's a boy. And my grandmother just dropped me, you know, on the floor. And she's like, okay, I'm going to go to the hospital with a whole basket of eggs. So I did experience that. That was my childhood, you know, and I know a lot of small towns, villages are still like that. But positively, you know, in modern China, in big cities, women has a very high status right now. I don't know if you heard this from social media or mainstream media, but it's something interesting and probably funny that I observe. So in modern families, women or wives take control of the money. And they have to give their husband pocket money, like they decide how much to give to their husbands. So, you know, it's just something very lighthearted that I want to share, that the shift, you know, in barely like 20, 30 years that I have seen. And I see a lot of strong women, young women in China are advocating for their rights as well. Yep.
Thank you. Dr. Marlene?
Oh, I love that story. It reminds me actually of my own experience around being first generation. So thank you for sharing that, Dr. Wina. Being first generation and or any, you know, at any phase of your life and looking at how that influences your international and cultural perspective. My parents were Spanish dominant, didn't know the language, so I that kind of set my path for kind of being the protector and the being able to translate with them and navigate the system, if you will, the American system with them. And so experiencing that from an early age, it gave me a sense and appreciation and ownership for different cultures and respecting different languages, and that curiosity that eventually led me down the path of working then that personal interest and then working for professional organizations that gave me those opportunities to explore internationally. And I can share a couple of experiences around, it doesn't matter how much you study or, study the playbook around going to another country and you're going to be culturally relevant. And it's all about listening and learning and being observant, right? It's the opportunities to learn from other cultures and be respectful and mindful that I find. And also what Pepperdine has offered us through this program and being able to visit different countries. And I hear this year, the program will be going to new countries, and that's amazing. And even being able to explore countries that we may normally not have normal exposure or access to, and then being in that learning environment with your group, I've been able to do through the program at Pepperdine and through professional associations. But then when you're in the actual settings, no matter how much you want to be the right culturally sensitive person, right, finding yourself of questioning and asking and being in situations of, well, why is this the way it is in this country? Why is it that women go to the separate room and have separate meals? And why is it that women are seen as either you're only to be seen, not heard, or being the decision maker in your organization and being in a production set in a country that's very male dominant, and being able to see that play out as far as another member of your team that will probably be seen will be given more validation versus you because you are of your background or ethnicity or age or what have you, whatever excuse that culture decides to place upon you. But what I hear also in this panel is the how do you overcome those challenges and barriers, and going back to the experiences that bring you to those real situations as far as how you handle it. You can either take the high road and just say, well, you can't change the culture overnight and you can't change the customs, but you can be mindful, respectful, learn from it, and learn how to navigate and work through them. And then specifically also looking at, being that representation of empowerment. I kind of, I feel that here with this panel as far as strong, passionate women who have the ability to cross borders and showcase what we are capable of doing and what we are able to bring to the table. And sure, they may not see that every day all the time or be comfortable with that situation, but I love Dr. Dean Williams said this during our trip in India. She said, let's showcase how to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? And I love that. I've kind of carried that mantra with me in the last couple of years around, okay, it's going to be different. You're going to be in an environment where it's probably uncomfortable and you don't like it. And you can either be that, abrasive, harsh person and be the loud person in the room, but you can also be the person that takes the high road, understands and listens and works around those situations. So that's a little bit about international experience.
Absolutely. Jeanette?
Yeah, I wanted to share one of my fondest memories of being in a different country and being treated differently, especially because I was female. Sometimes in the US, when I'm treated differently, it's hard for me sometimes to figure out, is it because I'm a person of color? Or is it because I'm a female? Or is it because of some other reason? And, I've had to just come to the realization that actually that's someone else's issue. It's not my issue. I can only be myself and how God created me uniquely to be. But one of my fondest memories of being in an international location was traveling to Japan when I was pregnant. And there was so much honor and respect given for me because I had this life within me that it just profoundly touched me. That experience sticks in my mind as something that, certainly within the US, pregnant women are treated with a certain level of respect, but I had never experienced something like that before going to Japan and actually having people who had never met me providing me gifts, honoring this life that I was about to bring into the world. And it was just an incredible positive experience. It also caused me to reflect on, just thinking about maternity leave and in this day of us celebrating International Women's Day and knowing that we still have some challenges ahead of us, comparing in Japan, for example, where I believe they get 26 weeks of paid leave, maternity leave, or my travels to Italy, for example, similarly, I was so amazed by their paid leave, so generous, 5 months of paid leave, I believe it is in Italy. And every international trip that I've been fortunate to take, I always reflect back to when I was pregnant and traveling and how I was treated versus coming to the US where, of course, we don't yet have mandated paid leave. There is the unpaid leave up to 12 weeks that is protected by the FMLA. But I guess I'm just weaving in a little bit of our challenges that are still ahead for us as we look at sustaining positive change as part of International Women's Day. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Suellen and then Samin.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing these amazing stories. I love to hear international stories. So I am Brazilian. I live in the US since December this year. I think that in my career, I was blessed with international experience. The last company I worked, one of my positions was the director for international logistics and integrated business planning. And it was a multinational company. We exported to more than 150 countries. You can see almost all countries in the world. And I had the pleasure to meet several of our offices in Dubai, in Tokyo, in Shanghai, in other Latin America countries and so. And in one of my international experiences, I went to India, and it was an amazing experience because we didn't have an office there. I was a woman in a country in which the decisions for business, especially in the meat industry, was made by men. And I went there with, I was doing an international module for my master's degree at the time. I took 1 week vacation to take that module. And then I went to work, traveling to several cities there. And very soon I started to learn how different the culture is. First, they speak 32 languages. And it's so nice to see the power of people raising from a culture like that, because my driver, he had no education at all, but he could speak English and other 3 languages from the country. And then I learned also about their habits, food habits. For example, we have this tendency to judge food from different countries or something like that, or compare, and we don't know the origin of it. I don't know if you know, but 65% of the 1.3 billion people in India live under the poverty line, and they don't have energy or something like that. So why do they eat so spicy food? Is because it is a way to put some antibiotics into their body. So, in order to, make this bridge between Brazil, a meat company, to India, we needed to understand the whole environment that they were living in. And as a matter of fact, we were the first one to export chicken meat to India. It was just a detail, but it came from this understanding. So when you ask Dr. Gabi to compare other culture, Brazilian culture or other culture to the US, I don't think that the comparisons among cultures is fair in my perspective. So when we think about the global mindset, in my perspective, what we have to do is kind of expanding our own awareness from the others, so learn why do they do what they do, why they believe in, some habits that they follow, or religions or whatever, and how can we expand our mindset to include them all. Because we can definitely learn with someone, who can, pass through so many hardship and still survive in a country like that, So this is the first thing for me. When you are trying to learn other culture is, am I judging or am I learning with them? And the learning mindset is the one that I think we should always consider, because it brings us the most results from the experience.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Samin?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, panel, for sharing your experience with us. I'm originally from Iran, and women and girls in Iran still face discrimination on base of sex and deeply held historical gender beliefs. Gender inequality causes many problems which impact women and girls, such as domestic and sexual violence, childbirth, lower pay, lack of education access, lack of healthcare, and lack of legal representation and political standing. My experience dramatically changed in the United States after I began working with other incredible progressive women and found a mentor. I was fortunate enough to work with Pepperdine University, United Nations Human Rights Council, State Department, and US Vice President, a special advisor regarding policy concerns between the United States and the Middle East.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
May I talk? Okay, so I grew up in Gaza, Palestine. And as you may know, it's really a very challenging situation because of like political unrest, because of like also being like living in poverty, very limited resources, and such things. And in relation to like gender equality, or like how it's been women has been treated, I would say like there is variations within the culture itself. Like some of the points that Swailen, I always have troubles saying your name correctly. Swailen, right? Or Swailen?
No, that's right. You
Okay.
pronounce it right. Thank you.
Okay, nice. So there are variations among like different families, different places, different areas, and sometimes like from my own experience, I felt like being in a challenge, with really a hardship, that facing death, that you might expect that you would be die today, tomorrow, this moment, next moment, you don't know. So help us to stick together, men and women, and always focus in our education, focus in our success, and be powerful. I remember like the days when I was so young. Always my mom used to come and visit me in my schools, try to encourage me and say, your education is your is your way to to success. And I have like this encouragement, I have this support. And even when I came here to the United States, and sometimes I felt like really challenged, how could I continue? Because I had my master's degree and I thought, okay, I waited like 2 years, and then my mom used always when she called me, okay, you can do this, because you have the power, and there are people like they can do it, then you can. So I believe it's like there are different other factors, and there are variations within like within the culture itself, and having the support, sticking together, and being always have a purpose in mind, and then I think you can reach to your goal. So I believe like there are variations, just to clarify this. And then yes, we have been sometimes into different situations. There are like segregation in my schools and back home in Palestine, but this is like for them, that they feel like this is okay. I mean, maybe it's not okay here, but for them, this is the norm, the cultural norm, which I would say that's not related to any like religious or something, but it's related to cultural norm. So I would say that rethinking the way how we think about barriers, rethinking the way how we think about challenges, and then being together, stick together as women. And I would say thank you to my mom and my family who always supported me. My husband as well, he always pushed me. There was one day I cried and I came back home, and I said, I can't do this, because one of the instructor told me, you cannot continue. You have families, take care of your family. I think this your job. This is what you can do. And then I cried and I said, I don't want to continue, but that you can do this. So the second day I tried harder, because our brain can function. We have like this brain, why not, like what Jeanette was using. We have this brain, and Allah created us differently, to show that we can, to show our capabilities, to raise our voices, and to show good example, to be like a role model for others who have similar challenges. It could be more challenges than what I have faced, or it could be less, but we can if we have if we use our brain correctly, if we know that Allah created us, or God created us for a purpose, and we work hard toward their purpose, then I think we will be able to overcome all these challenges, whether these challenges related to culture, whether these challenges related to stereotypes, whether these challenges to misunderstanding. Yes, I faced several challenges, but I was able to, to overcome these challenges by not like ignoring them, but by looking at them and actually analyzing them and see why, it exists. What's the reason behind it, and how can I make a difference? So that's all.
Thank you
you.
for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for letting me share.
Absolutely.
So
Dr. Gabriella, yep.
So I am first generation as well. My parents are Nigerian, and I'm very heavily involved in my Nigerian culture as long as my American culture. And I've been very fortunate that my parents from a very young age required my brother and I to travel around the world often so that we're not ignorant to other cultures. And sadly to say, I feel like my culture has given me the hardest time as a woman. Nigeria is ruled by men. Women are second-class citizens. And although I was able to see that through some of my male family members, I've had some of my uncles tell me, when you go on a date with men, don't talk about your career, don't talk about your education, because it's intimidating to men. And that can be very frustrating to be told by your own family members. But my research during when I was writing my dissertation focused around the quality and delivery of basic education. And I picked a rural area in Nigeria to go to and collect my data. And some of my sample were teachers and principals, and most of them were male. And I would explain to them what my research was about, and what I want to do in the future with it. And a lot of the times it would be like, oh, so what about children? What about marriage? Can you be doing this kind of work and still have children, have marriage? That should be first. That should be a priority. You're a woman. You're not getting any younger. And that's very, very frustrating. And although we have our issues in America with being a woman, I feel like I've had a harder time internationally when it comes to being a woman. Mind you, I've been to other places around the world where women were celebrated, were uplifted, which was fantastic. But I do have this experience within my own culture that just makes it really hard and sometimes discouraging. It makes you feel like, well, maybe I should just focus on being a mom. Like, what am I really doing going to school? Why am I trying to save education around the world? I should just focus on being a mom and being a wife. But once again, you have to have a stronger mind over what I'm often told when it comes to that.
I'd love to chime in on that if I may. Thank you for bringing that up. Motherhood, as far as how it impacts also our how we shape our worlds and our communities. It's interesting because when I was at a point in my career, I kept holding it off as far as being able to be very focused and being very determined, but it came a point where I had to make the decision of it's now or never, and feeling like you want to start forming a family, your priorities start shifting. But I remember getting the sense of, well, I've made it at this point in my career around this mid-level, mid-management level, and the companies I worked for, and I'm about to start a family. I guess be happy with what you've gotten to be so far. And I remember my father at the time saying, why in the world would you think that? It's almost like you're hitting pause on your life or your dreams and your outlook. Quite the opposite. You're about to have a family and be a mother, and your dreams should be bigger and exponential, and you should work harder and want to be the best role model and best example you can be for your family, for your child. And I carry that with me because literally everything changed exponentially for the positive and the better. My life, career, personal. It's the being able to live through the lens of now a child that you bring into this world, and as far as being able to now teach and educate and nurture and be the caretaker and all these multiple hats that as women we have to take and put on and serve for others in our community. So I just wanted to also share that experience of not feeling like motherhood is a hindrance, but like quite the opposite, that motherhood has been like the catapulting point in my life where it's the everything I do. And now she's an inspiration, my daughter. as far as being able to, when I see how she gets excited about learning something, or when she achieves something, it kind of makes me want to aspire and do better for her and for us and our family. So I wanted to share that.
Thank you, Marlene. I really appreciate that. For some of you on the call that know me and that we've spent time together, I've spoken about my kids at length with some of you, and you hear the stories of our dinner table. And so I can completely relate. Granted, my kids are, my son is 18. I know I look so young. How can I possibly have an 18-year-old? But my son is 18 and my daughter's 9. And she's sassy and spicy and, emotional and outspoken, and she calls me out, and that's okay. Culturally, it might not be okay, right? My kids, the whole back talking thing is it's a non-issue in my household, because I want them to experience the fullness of who they are. But hearing you talk about motherhood in that way, I think is really important, because it's a superpower. Like, and this isn't about those of you that have kids, don't have kids, don't want kids, want kids, not that conversation. But the fact that as women, we can have kids, we can bear kids, we can raise kids. And it isn't, some of us do it alone, some of us not. This isn't about that. It's about our superpower and what we bring to the table and who we are in the totality of our experience. So thank you. Thank you for that, because I think it's important. It's important to acknowledge who we are in that wholeness. With that being said, I'm going to hand over the moderation to Dr. Aasiyah, and she will continue with the next set of questions.
Well, I'm listening to everybody talking and I'm like, wow, it's all these experiences. It's just so wonderful. I'm also first generation. So all of you that spoke about this, I thank you for the time. I completely resonate with everything that you all said. Now, with that being said, I would like to ask you the next question that I have here, and that is this. Because we're talking about allyship, we are talking about gender equality, and obviously IWD is celebrating gender equality. We're trying to bring more of that in the world. We want to see that, and so the question is, we know that closing the gender equality gap is through allyship and inclusion. How can we create a balance where allies are part of our conversation and creating the change that we want to see?
Can I
Go ahead.
share my thoughts on that?
Yes.
This is a topic that I love, I confess. I don't think that there is inclusion in allyship and inclusion are not separate for me. Because this is the thing. To build allyship, you have to have a diverse network, to build a powerful allyship connection and such. Because imagine that this is one thing that I also would, ask this question to everyone that is listening to us. How diverse is your network? So put your name in a blank, piece of paper, and then start to write around your name everyone that is close to you. How similar they are to you. How many of them are women? How many of them are men? How many of them are Black men? How many of them are Mexican men? How many of them, I am a Catholic. How many of the people I know are from other religions, Why that is important, in my opinion, because the more diverse is your network and the more meaningful relationship you build with those people, that you can count on them and you can build, a powerful allyship with them. So you can have powerful allies. So when you need, you can count on them. So this leads me to the other part of it. That is, okay, now that I have this, diverse network, I understand different cultures. I have, a relationship of trust built with a lot of people. How does allyship work? Allyship work for me is, based on trust and reciprocity. And this is where we women tend to fail. We tend to work a lot. We tend to give a lot, but we have to recognize that when time comes, you need to ask for help, and that's okay. And you can ask for help, not for other women, women that, know what you were facing. They feel the same way. No, you have to ask for help from the other side. Do you remember when I shared that situation with one of my boss? The person who helped me was another male from another area. So I had help from other women as well, but the one who helped me was another male. So this is very important. We don't need to agree with all aspects of our lives. We need to build trust and respect each other and build this relation of reciprocity. Reciprocity is not bad. Reciprocity is very nice. It's very powerful. So that's just my thought.
Thank you, Suelen. Thank you so much for that. Simin?
Yes, thank you. I believe that in order to become a true ally, it's important to understand what allies means. Allies, any person who supports, empowers, or stand up for another person or group of people. You can be ally by promoting people into leadership roles. This empowers people so they can take charge of lives instead of being dependent on help from others. In particular, you can make leadership opportunities more available to immigrants, women, people of color, low income people, people with disability, young people, and others. You can promote leaders by providing informal or formal leadership training, mentoring them, by inviting individuals to take leadership roles, or by supporting them in election or local office.
Thank you so much, Dr. Simin. Anybody else wants to answer? Because I think this topic of allyship is so important and something that I know we all want to talk a lot more about in developing the allyship with others around us within our communities and so forth. So I would love to know what else, what all of you think about this question. What other what about this one? How can the role of an ally be more impactful and influential in nature? I think that's something that's really important to know.
I think for me, it's a matter of them, I have a very short answer, honestly, it's a matter of them keeping the conversation going about this. This is something we need to continuously talk about. You just can't have one conversation and leave it at that. And then I think it's also, when they go, they challenge inequalities that they see. As previously said, we've had some of us that had people who have helped us because they maybe saw inequalities that were not fair to us as women, and they were the ones who were able to get us in the room, get us to where we need to be. So I think it's a matter of having continuing conversations and also challenging inequalities that they see.
Also add to that, being able as an ally, counting on your allies to, when you leave the room or you're not in the room, that they have your back and or representation as far as being that endorser for you, and being your supporter, right? Being able to not be in the room, but be talked about in a positive way and or supported in a positive way. And so it's being clear and intentional with your allies around, how you interact, your relationship, how you develop those relationships and how you help each other grow. And I tend to do that in my network around highlighting either projects or good work when people are not in the room, because I do feel that that's important in our role and responsibility as we carry forward and mentor the future, that comes after us, as far as, well, what is being said and how are you driving, people and motivating them and moving them forward and helping them grow.
I love that answer. Go ahead, Dr. Jeanette.
I love everything that is being shared. And the only additional thought that I would offer up is that I think that embracing allies involves embracing people across the entire gender identity spectrum, and us recognizing whether you're different based on LGBTQ or based on some other aspect of your uniqueness that you bring to the table, that they're allies across the entire gender spectrum. And sometimes there are people that we don't necessarily even know are our allies. I think about people that are on grand platforms, such as the CEO of Salesforce.com comes to mind because he's been mentioned before in terms of the challenge that he put forth to other leaders of organizations to say, hey, we got to make sure that we're continuing to keep an eye out on pay equity concerns within our organizations. And that goes even broader than just pay equity. It goes into, making sure promotions are done on a fair basis. And so I just wanted to add that additional component of certainly our allies being individuals that span, all aspects of gender identity, and recognizing that we all are working towards that common goal of having an environment where eventually all diverse backgrounds are included as part of the solution and recognized for bringing value to organizations and teams.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Jeanette. And I know, Dr. Simini, you had your hand up again. You're muted. Put your volume back up. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
I believe that an ally should be an effective communicator, willing to understand cultural roles and intersectionally within differing environments. Allies must address negative systematic social issue which oppress others while developing sense of urgency and raising the level of social responsibility within communities. In order to create real lasting change, a strong leader must be willing to advocate with and on behalf of disadvantaged community members. Those who are willing to exploit, to target vulnerable individual groups or organizations must understand their conduct will not be tolerated through direct accountability practice. I believe that a strong community or organizational leader will help forge the way toward a more just, equitable society. With practice, we all have the power to be our own advocate as well as become allies for others.
Thank you for that.
Can I just add something? It's kind of a tip that I got from Sally Helgensen, the author of How Women Raise. And after I heard her, I started to apply that. And it's a very simple and powerful tool for us women. We always struggle with something. Sometimes we struggle with public speaking. Sometimes we struggle with, writing something. Sometimes we struggle in understanding financial statements and this kind of thing. Sometimes we just can't control our emotions. So one powerful way to build allyship in your work, in your personal life, is look at yourself and see what are the things that you want to improve. And if you improve that, you can have this jump. So, okay, let's say I want to improve my presentation skill in English. I can say, hey, Aasiyah, could you help me with something I'm going to present? Could you afterwards give me feedback? And this is very powerful, but we have to learn to receive feedback because I'm building a allyship, right? If Dr. Aasiyah started to give me feedback and I started to justify everything to say, hey, I'm right, I'm not doing it right, you know, I have to listen carefully and see, and also ask for maybe, okay, I don't know how to do that. Could you explain that to me? So those are powerful allies, are impactful allies for our lives. And we hold us back from asking for this kind of support. And it makes a huge, huge difference. I can speak by myself because I had improved in some areas that I thought, okay, I'm a lost case in this area. After receiving this support, it's really powerful. So it's just a tip for everyone here.
Thank you for that tip. That's a wonderful tip, Swellen. I mean, just all of you having this conversation is very powerful. And it's just such a great thing, such a great point that you just made, of course. And so I want to move us on to one of our final questions here, which is, what do you think needs to be done in order to, create a more sustainable future for women and girls worldwide? Simin, go for it, Dr. Simin.
Yes. Ensure women's rights are protected, eliminate all form of violence against women and girls in public and private sector, including domestic assault, rape, sex trafficking, and exploitation. Full and effective participation and equal opportunity leadership at all political, economic, and societal decision-making level.
Dr. Reina. Thank you, Dr. Simin.
Sure, thank
you. I think 2 points. First is the mindset. I think someone mentioned that earlier, the education for mindset. And that takes a long time, right? It takes generations. So I was being educated in a way that right now I would doubt myself and would wonder if I am bothering others by, for example, taking on maternity leave, right? Or asking for this help, like Swellen says, like asking for help, am I bothering others? I think that's a mindset issue. That's a culture related too. And if we don't have that education early on in like very early years, that will, like at least I am still carry that baggage with me. So I don't think that can be solved even with social support. If people's mind doesn't change, even with support, that wouldn't really matter. The other thing is, I guess, also going back to the allyship, is modeling for ourselves and allyship modeling for our kids, our new generations as well. Like as simple as stop stereotyping, right? Like, like for example, gender review, like pink is for girl, blue is for boy. And that's just why we are making, I may say this, go against many people who are doing pink and blue gender review, but to me, that's like things as small as that, you're labeling kids to a certain like gender is supposed to, you wear clothes as pink as a girl or things like that. So and I just found funny because my daughter's 3.5, right? So sometimes I'll say, oh, you're so cute. And she's like, no, I'm strong and beautiful. I was like, okay, you're strong and beautiful. And sometimes, oh, you're silly, right? I said, no, I'm not silly. I'm strong and beautiful. So it's very fascinating to see her put the 2 words, seems like very opposite, strong and beautiful, together and to identify herself. And I don't know where she got that from, because not for me, because I do feel myself has so many work to do, like including Dr. Ghazi, your research, like the imposter syndrome, right? So I'm glad she's saying that. So mine's education and modeling. That's for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rena. Dr. Jeanette.
Yes, I really appreciate the perspective shared. And I would only add, from my point of view, to create sustainable change for women and girls. I think I reflect back on this International Women's Day to when it was first originated in the 1909 timeframe, when there was a protest in New York City of about 15,000 advocates for voting rights and for fair pay. And, we've come a long way since 1909. At least we have the right to vote, but I am passionate as a Pepper postdoc fellow researching that fair pay issue. We still have a long way to go. And I think in terms of creating sustainable change, I am compelled to share that if nothing else is taken away from at least the remarks that I've contributed, I would love to have all women and girls be comfortable with the following question when it comes to negotiating pay. Because I think from a gender pay equity perspective, we have a long way to go, and we need to be comfortable asking the question of, is there more room for negotiation? When I was first delving into research around the glass ceiling and the glass cliff, and the fact that research demonstrated that oftentimes women don't even go for the roles that they certainly could easily be placed in, because they simply feel like they're not checking all the boxes on the job description. It hits home for me as a human resource professional for so many decades now, because I see it every day. It's missed opportunities because there simply was not a question asked in terms of, I've actually personally had male colleagues previously in my career ask me, well, Jeanette, how did you get that position? How did you get placed there? And I reply right back, why not me? So I think just offering up to create sustainable change, having that mindset of why not us? Why not us being in the seat, in the room where everything happens? Why not us creating the room where everything happens? Why not us calling the shots and being the key leaders to make things happen? And as we're negotiating those various roles at every stage of our careers, never being afraid to say, is there more room for negotiation? Because that pay gap is very real. So that is what I will offer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeanette. I'd love to know what you think, Dr. Sima.
Yeah, sure. Actually, what I was going to say was similar also to Dr. Jeanette and what she mentioned. So I think to create a sustainable change, it should start with at least like changing our practices in different organizations right now. So start with these organizations, offering more training about gender equity. And actually, like what Jeanette was saying, and paying attention to all of these variation among, among employees, and like how gender affected all of these variation, such as the salary, and sometimes women work extra time more than men. And they don't like to say, and they sometimes have this fear to speak out. So creating this environment, like a sense of belonging where they work, I think it's really important. So if we start with this, like creating a comfortable space for women, not to feel only like included, but to feel like they are appreciated, they are honored, and they are respected, and they are also protected. With whatever they say, they have the support, they are protected. And so once you feel and satisfy all of these different components, you feel like you belong to this place, you can start, and we can start by doing this simple change, and then moving forward, like I think it can impact generation after generation. And also I would say that simply we can also start with younger children, because like younger children are like new generations, so they are the ones who are going to lead us later on. So having more programs to empower these young generation of the different aspects, the different challenging that our society is facing, because one day they will lead, like days go by so fast. I see my children growing up so fast. But yeah, being in these different programs, empower them and give them the voice. So once they are like, in the workplace, now they feel like, they have this confidence, they have this power to speak out, to talk with different people, and to, to show that, this is my right. So I think these two simple steps, if we start with these two steps and then moving forward, changing policies, hopefully one day if you have more leaders showing policies, and so we can have trying to make sure like there is equality and equity between the different positions, the different salary, and the different treatments that men and women are having. So for example, in tech companies, you will see more women are taking like leadership position than men, and so on and so on. So yeah, let's just start by taking simple steps, because making a change takes time. So starting with this, changing practices, doing more training, and empowering young generation to lead and change. And that's it for me.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sima. And I see that Dr. Alice, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone has said. It's been excellent. For me, it's just a matter of, I think we need more women and girls, because those girls eventually become women. We need more women and girls in decision-making rooms and meetings. Right now, we have boards of men who are making decisions for women and making decisions that will impact us women. And there's not one woman in the room. And I'm a true believer that there's no one who will advocate for our futures better than we can advocate for our futures. So we just need to see more women and girls in those decision-making meetings, is what I believe.
We do. We need to see more women in different areas, right? Like in the boardroom and in, leadership positions in whether it's higher education or STEM or whatever industry we're in, right? Absolutely. I love that. Dr. Marlene.
I guess I'll focus it based on areas we can control and the areas that are part of our environment that requires, you all mentioned, longer systemic changes. The areas we can control include, I had a great mentor say, if you don't ask, you don't get. Vocalizing that, right? It's no one's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you're making X amount less than all your peers across the board. I have two great examples of exceptional female team members who did their research, went out, did comparison comps around salaries, job descriptions. They didn't wait for HR to do it for them, right? They went out and did their own research and came back and had a proposition and said, I feel I deserve X because of X, Y, and Z, not just because of what other people are making in the industry in the same job title. This is what I bring to the table. And it made me so proud of having those discussions and opportunities to be able to support that, because I wish that would have been me early on in my career, being able to be bold and have the courage to do so. So I'm very hopeful of our upcoming generations that are okay with having those conversations and having that arsenal and that in their toolkit to say, I'm worth it. And being able to ask, and going back to what my mentor said, if you don't ask, you don't get. So those are the areas we can control. And also on the flip side, right, it's the asking, but without any validation. It's well, I just want X amount more because I want it, but there's no justification behind it or rationale or contributions or productivity that comes with that, and what the value that you bring to your organization. And then I think of the areas that probably are more systemic policy. When I look at a great work that's being done around the former head of the Girls Who Code, I believe her Ms. Sarjani, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, came up about a year ago with a very kind of controversial topic that got a lot of people worked up around the Marshall Plan for moms and for women around, do we have the policies in place today around at what the panel has talked about today around paid family leave, childcare, being able to return. The pandemic has taught us all, right, the great resignation of women feeling that we have to bear the burden and be the caretakers, the child takers, the family caretakers. And so what is our infrastructure and our global governments doing to support us and doing so? So I see that also from the standpoint of systemic changes that we have to make globally. And then I also look at it from the perspective of community, right? Building community and networks, and that we're not alone, and that we have that shoulder to cry on, or that shoulder to celebrate, as we are doing here today. I kind of feel energized and ready to take on. I was feeling kind of the, what we as women take on, the superwoman syndrome of we want to take on the world and we want to conquer everything and cook and clean and do work and do fantastic work at school and work. And then you come and you're exhilarated by these conversations and the passion that you all have around, being that support system. So I encourage that too, to find your network or support system that can fuel you back, like you all did for me this evening. So I'll close with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. So I know that it is about to be 6:30, and I do want to make sure that we get everybody to answer this last question. So Sue Ellen, you are going to help us by answering this question, and then we're going to go ahead and start closing it out. But please go ahead and answer. Yes.
Okay. No, that's a great question. I agree with what everyone said here, and I totally agree with Dr. Marlene with the assumption that we needed to have a more actionable or practical steps on doing that. So here are some facts. The job zone of the future are in technology, STEM related areas and such. We almost closed our gap in education, but not in those areas. So where are the jobs of the future? We are not there yet. So, and everything starts, before it starts at school, in every country, we have different challenges. For example, education in the United States is totally different than in Brazil. Shaletta and I conducted a study, and we saw that girls were, overwhelmed by housework, housekeeping work, and they could not dedicate time to be, to do good in math, science, and such. So they are not being prepared for the future. So one thing that I would just, let for some thought is how can we as mothers, fathers, as educators, how can we motivate girls to engage more in the professions of the future?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This has been such a great panel. And it's just been so great to, have all of you here today and to really listen into all the different insights, especially today for International Women's Day. I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Gabby for her to go ahead and close us out for this evening.
So thank you all for being here. This was definitely, I think we could go on for hours just having a conversation about this very topic. I really appreciate the candor that you all shared today and the vulnerability in sharing your story. I think that goes a long way and it puts it in perspective for all of us. So thank you for that. And thank you for participating in our panel and being here today. To all of you here as our guests, thank you for joining us today, for being a part of this. I encourage you to attend the rest of our programming for Women's History Month. We have a couple of events coming up here in the next few weeks. Dr. Majidi will be doing a 3-hour workshop on self-esteem, which kind of ties right into this very last piece that we were talking about. And then Dr. Aasiyah is going to do a workshop on imposter syndrome. So by all means, please join us as we continue this dialogue and this discourse. We've posted the link to a survey in the chat if you have a moment to just give us a little bit of feedback and tell us how we did so that we can continue to improve. And with that, thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today.